Sorry. Just moving stuff around. Hi. Welcome to Tabletop for Two. Thank you so much for hanging out with us this evening or visiting us later on YouTube. It's so good to see so many wonderful friends in the chat.
Yeah.
This is episode 11 of Tabletop for Two, a D&D duet show where we take a deep dive into how to play one-on-one 5e. Really quickly before we begin, my name is Beth Ball. I'm a game designer and fantasy author and one of the two writers behind D&D Duet. Joining me this evening is Jonathan Ball, a game designer and educator, and the other half of D&D Duet.
Hello.
So, if you are new to us and our work, our 5th edition adventures and advice we write 5th edition adventures and advice for one-on-one D&D. You can learn about this special playing style and find adventures to help you on your way at dndduet.com. You can also follow us on socials on Twitter at dndduet or Instagram at dndduet.
Good stuff, honey. On this episode of Tabletop for Two, what is it that we're talking about today?
You're talking about one of our most often asked questions, which is how do you scale encounters, or how do you run combat or how do you scale combat for one-on-one 5e? So we're going to be talking about that in depth, starting with general principles for running duet encounters, and then we'll do some specific encounter building, which I'm really excited about because you are going to let us in on your design process for the Land of Vampires campaign, right?
Yes, I thought it'd be fun to build an encounter, a series of encounters from start to finish, and just kind of show some different considerations. And I would love, while we did that, honey, if you have any questions or anything to add in chat, if you have any questions or anything to add while we're doing that, that would be supremely helpful and fun, I think.
I will have questions for sure. I think chat will too.
So before we get started with all of that good stuff, we want to extend a special thank you to our lovely patrons who make all of our video content possible. And we want to welcome new patrons, of which we have a few. So thank you for jumping on board and seeing what's going on.
We're so happy that you're joining us, new patrons. And can I add one other announcement before you get into our other sponsor?
Announce away.
Now on our Twitch channel, we have all the special things with the sub with the present, and the sparkly bits, right?
Yep. We are figuring out what it all means, but it seems really exciting.
We're really happy that it's there, so we hope that you are too. And we'll be adding more personalization for our channel as we go along.
Yeah, with some help from some friends in the chat.
And patrons, I asked them about that today. I told them that if they leave it up to me, it's all going to be really druidy. So if they need it to be something else, besides like plants and leaves and green wolves, they're going to have to let us know. I think it being really sparkly would be really exciting too. Yeah, we have a proper sub button. So cute at the top, right?
We're basically next level.
Yeah, we're pretty official now.
Yeah.
Sorry, now you can talk about. Oh, sorry. What is it, honey?
Well, I've watched streams before, and they're like, so and so gifted some subs, and I have always been confused about that because I always think gifted subscribers, but I think that's what it actually means.
Subscription.
Oh, so you have a subscription that you're giving.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna.
You're our friends in chat are gifting us with their time and attention. And there's the sub part too.
Got it. It sounds good.
That's what it means. Caroline is not sure.
You said it confidently, so I believe you.
Yeah.
Our stream tonight is additionally sponsored by Aurora. Aurora is the prequel novella for the Age of Azuria high fantasy series, the story of a magical world that teeters on the brink between light and darkness. In this exciting action and magic-packed series filled with druids, pirates, werewolves, and more, ancient forces awaken and new heroes rise to the occasion. But this time, who will prevail? Visit bethballbooks.com/join to join the Story Enclave, Beth's reading community for her fiction, and as a special treat, receive a free ebook copy of Aurora when you sign up.
Thank you, honey.
Yeah.
And excitingly for right now and the foreseeable future till we'll just say the foreseeable future, you can get Buried Heroes, the first novel in the series, for free on my website, bethballbooks.com, or from your favorite bookseller. And some of that is in advance of the 1-year anniversary of Buried Heroes coming out, and some of that is in advance of Amber Queen coming out later this year. So we'll be talking about that in the summer for novel number 3. Super exciting. And if you would like to support the show and our other creations, we'd love for you to join us on Patreon. You can visit us on patreon.com/Grove Guardian Press, where we've just added fiction tiers, and you can access all the adventures in the Land of Vampire series, which we'll be talking about in a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay,
so, honey.
Yeah.
Where should we even start with scaling encounters? What do you think? Can I ask you a question first? What do you think it is about combat encounter? Like, why is this our number one most asked question?
So I think that it has 2 factors. So number 1, I think that CR kind of throws people off, as well as how creatures have been scaled. And like that passive voice there, how creatures have been scaled, how creatures tend to be scaled and run in D&D, that we have taken a group game and shrunk the group size to just 2 people and usually 2 characters. And so I think that can be a point of confusion or concern. Like Pink Sparkles just said in the chat, we don't want to kill our only PC. So that's extra concerning. If they die, especially if they're all by themselves, or if they and their friend die, who's going to help them? So I think that, as well as, I don't know, I think especially when you're just starting out, it can be hard to feel like you can change things that seem to be more set in stone or more official. And I think that can take some time to feel empowered to do. And so that's to me why this is such an important topic, and why it comes up so often is I think people just need the encouragement of, hey, yeah, whatever you think is right at your table at that time, fix it. There have been times in Tales of Eldura, for example, where an encounter I thought would be really difficult was nothing. And then an encounter that I thought would be just like, this is just a bump in the dungeon and we're leading on to bigger and better things, almost killed our main PC. And you were all by yourself. And one of those instances, it comes back very vividly to me. There was just kind of a confluence of things that the encounter was just a little bit more difficult than I had thought that it would be. And there's also that combination of changing things in advance. So you scale encounters at the beginning while you're prepping as a DM, but there's also an element of scale during the encounter itself that you have to kind of be on board for both of those things, and needing to make changes at the last minute or during an encounter doesn't mean you've done something wrong.
It's a lot to, like, as things are playing out too, especially early on, it can feel like a lot to juggle and manage, because you're like, oh, I've done all this prep, and then, you know, prep doesn't survive encounter with the players, right? If you're truly doing a co-creative experience, which is, you know, what we always recommend for one-on-one D&D, like, the best laid plans are going to quickly fall apart. And when you're less experienced, you know, you've carefully built this combat out, or like, you know, you have this scenario in your pocket, and then things start going sideways. If you're just kind of like going, if you kind of tunnel vision with working through the complicated mechanics of 5e, it's a lot to keep track of and manage, like who's got which condition and when do they get advantage and when do they get disadvantage, and how does, you know, this work, and where is this buff coming from, and all that. Like, it can be, there's so much to manage. It can feel very, I don't know, it's easy to get kind of like stuck on the rules as rails as opposed to rules as more of guidelines.
Like, and be overwhelmed by them too.
So mechanically in 5e, there are some things that we always are encouraging people to keep track of, such as action economy. Do you want to talk about action economy, honey?
Yes. My sense is that action economy either remains kind of amorphous or at least not very popular. So briefly, what action economy is if we have two sides that are facing off against each other, how many actions, specifically not turns, how many actions does each side get per round? So if it's chess, you can move one piece. Everybody's action economy is 1. If it's not chess, so in this case, if you're playing D&D, wouldn't that be cool if chess, like you could, anyway, that's off topic. So if I have, let's say I've got my ranger who's a higher level and she has a wolf and an adventuring companion, and she has extra attack. That's like 4 actions for each, 2 for the ranger, at least how we play with the adventuring companion and the wolf. Some with the old mechanics versus the new mechanics for Beastmaster, that could change. So we'll just let that go for now. We would give the wolf their own attack and the adventuring companion their own attack, at least 1. So that's 4, even though I only have 3 people. So then on the other side, maybe I have a necromancer who is running around with 3 zombies. So they get their spell attack and each of the zombies gets their attack. I don't think zombies have multi-attack, but I could be wrong. Let's say these are single attack zombies. That's 4 and 4 for our action economy, even though we have 4 people on one side and 3 people on another. The number of actions that everybody is getting to take is 4 and 4. Did I explain that the right way?
Yeah. So it's about the balance of which team has actions and do those match up, or is it one-sided? And if it's one-sided, then the side with more actions has a better chance of claiming victory.
Right. And that's important because let's say that you have a higher level PC who's fighting off against a bunch of lower level NPCs or monsters. That higher level PC needs to roll well for each of their rounds, and they're still going to be taking damage from all of the different things every single round. And so that's why action economy is so important, because the number of actions can really chip away at one party or the other before you might kind of expect.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things that can really kind of throw a wrench in action economy too is when you are using flanking rules, which we like flanking rules because it encourages a little bit more movement and tactical positioning and all that. But like, say you are fighting with a bunch of one of Beth's signature moves is to conjure woodland beings. Is that woodland beings?
Conjure animals and bring out the wolf pack. Because the wolves, when they're close to each other, each get advantage on their attack. And so you are getting an extra chance per bite to have a good roll and to actually land a hit. So it's the wolves that change the action economy more technically, right? And they just have a better chance of hitting. The having advantage doesn't add an action.
Right. But that's another, like, I'm just talking about advantage and disadvantage as something that can complicate action economy. Okay.
Yeah. Keithamon, I think, says that having advantage or disadvantage is like a +5 or 6 bump on average, which I think is really, if we think about somebody having proficiency in something, that's +2, +3, +4 at higher levels or at mid-range levels versus having advantage on something. +5 or +6 sway is a pretty big deal.
Totally. And I think it's interesting to see an example of something like that. So right now I've got the Bandit pulled up on 5th SRD, which is one of the websites we use a lot for building encounters, because it's just got the whole SRD that you can use to design your games and publish them, that Wizards makes available for everybody as long as you have the open game license at the end of it.
And it's easily searchable.
Yeah, it's easy to search. It's got several different indices. But right now I'm showing the Bandit, and good old Bandit has, 11 hit points, and he's, a 1/8 CR rating. And he actions, he can use a scimitar or light crossbow one time. So the party, like a standard challenge rating party of 4 level 1 characters would be evenly matched and have a medium encounter with 8 bandits, because parties or player characters are generally more hardy than your bandit with 12 AC and 11 hit points. But if we look at the bandit captain, who has multi-attack, he's a CR2. The captain makes 3 melee attacks, 2 with its scimitar and 1 with its dagger. This one bandit captain, he's a little bit hardier, but he can attack 3 times to a bandit's 1 attack. And that's one of the big things that makes him such a stronger foe for a low level party.
And he could basically, especially depending on the HP of the party members, he could one-off a character, couldn't he, pretty easily?
Totally.
You put him in front of a level 2 character.
Yeah. It's going to have a bad time. And so that one bandit captain becomes way scarier than, even a few bandits.
Yeah. And so those are things to keep in mind. One thing that came up in our game this past weekend with this monster that our home characters, Persephone and Jack, were fighting was this creature fighting them, I think, could have killed one of the characters or the other, but kind of divided its attention between the two of them. And some of that is so that we can do different things in combat and the combat can keep going. And some of that was we were looking at who had lower HP was Persephone, but who was below half health was he just has a lot more HP than she does. And so that's something that we've kept in mind too, that you want to think about for your duet game and know kind of what you want your approach to be in that case as the GM. Know what's okay with your player in that instance, because going after the PC directly to kill them, I think can work really, really well in a really particular combat situation. So you've been building up to, you're facing a BBEG, so maybe not the BBEG of the campaign, but a BBEG. They've got some sort of really personal thing against the character. We did that in a green dragon fight. And before my character got to take one action, she got to cast a spell as a surprise and the dragon wiped her out. It was pretty stressful.
Ciao.
And she came back, but the dragon had a lair action, I think, and with the breath and a chomp and something else. That was it for my PC. Jonathan running the dragon was devastated. Those are some of the things you want to think about. That's another reason why we recommend having a GM PC on top of the PC, so you can spread that damage out just a little bit. Maybe you can have the PC, if they need to be not directly in melee, have them back a little bit instead of directly in that situation.
Mm-hmm. And there's lots of little things that you can do and little tricks that you can use to make the combats a little bit more even if you realize that there's a big mismatch, or if you realize that your monsters are getting totally stomped and you were planning on having something a little bit more protracted or more challenging or more harrowing, then there are little tricks that you can use, like, this isn't even my final form, or oh yes, this was just the sentinel and the sound of the fighting drew in the real thing. How about you go make a snack while I set this up, flipping through the monster manual furiously. I think
from the flip side, the monsters seem to be more hurt than you thought that they were at the beginning of the fight, as you as the DM. Take off some hit points if needed.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of multi-stage bosses, and using kind of like if I have a particular like a big bad thing that they're fighting, if it's just one thing, turning that one big encounter into 3 smaller encounters can vary up the pace, and so it's not just a slog. Like some of the creatures in the regular monster manual, like the vanilla monster manual, are kind of just like, I don't know, sword sponges. Like they can take a lot of abuse, but they can't really do a lot of interesting things. And that's something I think that they worked on with like Volos and Mordenkainens and stuff like that. But if you want to use one of those like classic D&D monsters that just has a ton of HP and not a lot to do, then one of the things that you can do is a multi-stage boss battle, which is really fun.
Honey, can you describe that in a little bit more detail, just so everybody's really clear on what that means? What is a multi-stage boss fight?
Yeah, for instance, you could say the party is encountering a cult leader, and he is presenting in that moment like a just a evil dude in a black robe with a dagger. You know, maybe he has some like cult fanatic style appearance. Yeah. And then he gets kind of hedged in and beaten down. Maybe you're using a mage stat block, and you know the mage is vanquished. You can use that vanquished state to, you know, like his cloak burbles and black ichor begins shooting out of it, and out of it pops a demon, and then you have the party kind of immediately confronting a demon. And maybe at that point you have a change of stage too. Maybe instead of the demon popping out of the black cloak, it sucks the party into a demonic demiplane where they have to contend with it. Or maybe the demon appears and then knocks down a wall of the cult church. Where do cults congregate? Temple, yeah, the cult temple. It just like blows out a wall, and then the party has to decide: do we immediately pursue it and rest, or do we immediately pursue it, or do we stay here and rest? You know, so that's kind of what I'm thinking about when I'm talking about a multi-stage boss battle. Something that takes a few different occult conclave. Yes, takes a few different forms. It might happen across a few different stages.
And changes the sorts of choices that the party is making, as well as potentially the types of creatures they're fighting, where maybe you have some that are more spell-based, some where they have the advantage of their environment, and some where they, you know, are, what did you call them? Sword
sponges.
Sword sponges.
Yeah, Boom Bunny. Totally lifted from, you know, Final Fantasy games where they're just getting down to, oh, you think you've beaten the thing, and then all of a sudden it's something different.
Surprise.
But when we talk about like kind of mechanics and principles, we've got action economy. We talked about how we can have multiple waves of opponents. We talked about how advantage and disadvantage can mess with action economy a little bit, or not. It doesn't literally mess with action economy, but it certainly can affect the flow of combat. I think it's also important to consider if your creatures are using lair actions in their, or legendary actions from when they're confronted. Both, yeah. That's certainly going to factor in.
Can I add in? Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I would just say like that usually comes up, like legendary actions and lair actions usually comes up, and at a point in which the party has the ability to tip the action economy in their favor. And so if the monsters or creatures that they were fighting didn't also have some kind of advantage to tip the action economy in their favor, then it'd be very one-sided.
Yeah. And I think that that's I remember when we were setting up, I can't remember what we were going to be fight. Oh, I think it was during our vampire campaign with Braceris when you had set up this like really intense um this like really intense environment for kind of our final lair fight with Nassark to make it more challenging. I won't spoil anything for anybody, but making it more challenging because if we look at the different types, if we have big bads, some of them are going to have just a whole bunch of HP. Some of them are going to be more castery or like if they can charm a character and then they can do things that are more devastating. It has some conditions to it. They might be lower HP themselves. If you get a paladin who rolls really well and gets to go early in their fight with your big vampire boss,
it's a bad time.
Big vampire boss isn't going to be they're going to seem kind of not very exciting. And it might seem anticlimactic a little bit versus letting the players go in with a really cool plan that takes advantage of this paladin friend that they have. Like, so you're not trying to penalize the player or trick them, but you are trying to let your bosses be boss.
Yeah. I would say too, another one of my, there were like multiple things that I thought of while you were talking about that. And I think pointing out like not penalizing players for having a really good plan is so important. Mm-hmm. I distinctly remember being a player in a game and spending all this time thinking of this cool plan and then going in and we'd revealed the plan to the DM who had a different vision in mind for what was going to happen and just kind of like shrugged the shoulders, twizzled the mustache and smote us all anyway.
Sorry, baby.
We had a plan.
And that can be a hard thing. I know we've talked about that in previous sessions of the importance of trust between the player and the GM in one-on-one. And so you guys can work on the plan together. Our favorite strategy around this is set up a situation that you don't have an answer for. And that way you, as your GM PC, can help the player figure out the solution without them having to be worried about, I mean, again, they trust you. They're not having to worry about you tricking them at the last second, for instance. They know that you're on their side.
Yeah, I think one of the core principles about scaling and running and building encounters for one-on-one is that the DM and the player are on the same side. And I think at the end of the day, like we're playing this game in order to spend time together, telling stories and having fun. And like that is more important than anything else. It can be fun to be in a stressful situation and to have to make hard decisions and to have the drama of your player character getting their head knocked off, right? Like that can be fun. As long as that's fun, then you're doing it right. But if it would be more fun to do something else and have the player character like pull out some kind of last moment, heroic maneuver, if that's more fun, then go with that. Yeah. Fun should win.
Mm-hmm. So like in our game this past weekend, my PC cast Contagion, and we used the updated version of Contagion, not the monster killer version of Contagion that's in at least our copy of the player's handbooks. We're like on D&D Beyond, making sure we have the right version of the spell. So it takes 3 rounds for it to work. And then I think, did I decide on Flesh Rot? Whichever thing is.
Or Slimy Doom.
I think I did Flesh Rot.
I think you were.
I was going to do Slimy Doom, but I was like, no, the one that makes them vulnerable to all damage. Dun dun. So then my fighter companion rolled a nat 20 twice in a row, and he has like all these cool bonuses. So he ends up doing 70 points of damage in 1 round, which was like just all these things doubling because we doubled, and then it doubled again because the creature is vulnerable. And that was totally fine because it had been a really tough fight. It was a really sudden turn of the tables, but my character's plan, I mean, she used her only 5th level spell at the beginning of that combat. And it wasn't until 4 rounds later that we started to kind of see what the payoff for that sacrifice and that risk was. It could have been much different. Like it could have not worked out at all, but it worked out in this super cool way that was really devastating to the scary thing we were fighting. But you still gave us that space for her to like really get to shine in that moment.
I think that's the thing, right? Like awarding the big plays and the risk when you can. And nothing sucks worse than getting your one act. Like I've faced this with Gareth a couple of times where like, this is my moment. I've got one act. You only get one action. Do not roll a natural one. Like, and you shoot your shot and nothing happens. Or like the demon or whatever you're fighting is just like, and you're just, well, I guess I'll just sit here while I get punished some more. And thank goodness I have relentless endurance.
Or Gareth, I'm sorry, honey.
It's not your fault. Gareth rolls pretty bad.
He does not roll very well.
4s all over the place.
So we talked about waves of combatants, the importance of action economy and keeping it in mind, as well as just to kind of sum up, not taking challenge rating at face value. So making sure you're kind of digging into why is this creature a CR, whatever, and thinking about like how many HP do they have? And then that's going to depend a lot on how much damage does your party do on average per round. Yes, whatever this, tell me.
Oh, I thought of something while you were talking about this that you made a note about it before. Anyway, so one of the things that I think helps a lot is typically at our table, like I don't use the averages because sometimes that can help tip things one way or the other for the party. And if I'm just using the straight averages, then the bad guy or whatever, even if they hit consistently, they're doing significant damage consistently. And I know that rolling the dice every time can sometimes feel a little slower or more tedious or something, but like I'll take the odds and that helps me kind of like, for instance, I feel like it hamstrings, if I'm just using the damage averages from the monster manual, I feel like that hamstrings me as a DM to make the executive decision or whatever that, oh, this blow does a little bit less damage this time if it needs to. Because
instead of leaving it to the dice.
Yeah, because if Beth's character taking average damage is boring. I agree, Boom Bunny. So if Beth's character knows that every time this dude hits, he's doing 20 damage, and we're getting down to like a sketchy area where it's looking like, oh my gosh, I'm about to kill another one of Beth's characters, then I roll the dice and I like look up at her. I'm like, he did 10 points of damage this time. She's going to look at me like, and see, like part of the fun, I think, is it loses the magic if you know that things are being kind of manipulated behind the scenes. And I feel like hamstrung by that. And some people like that, like we're going to do it like all rolls are in the open, and that's, but that's a conversation for your table. If that's what's serving fun, then do that. But otherwise, I, as a DM, prefer to keep my tools if I can. Not that I would ever fudge a roll ever.
I don't fudge rolls because I give it away. So all mine are on Front Street, and then we'll just figure it out from there. And just to clarify, my characters have died, but we've always brought them back one way or another. I don't want anybody watching at home to be like, or worried or think that we're like advocating for PC death. We talk about that in a different episode, so please tune into that one. And we've written about it a couple times on the blog too. So those resources are there. If you go to dnddirect.com and type PC death into the search, it'll be all set.
I'm pro PC death.
I was going to ask, Do you use the HP averages for creatures?
That's a great question. I typically do use the HP averages, but if we get into it and it's like, whoo, this one's turning into a real slog, then I might decide that he has a lower limit. Or if Jet comes in and pulls off one of his classic 2 swipe nat 20s with double 12s or whatever he rolls, then
Rolls D10s.
then that thing's gonna die, but its friend shows up and it looks mad
And powerful.
and more powerful. It's got an eye patch.
The slogan. It's ready to go.
It's got its own hype music. It's got its walk-in music.
Yes. The music shifts. Awesome.
Dun, 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 dun.
Honey, are you ready to talk about creating encounters for Land of Vampires?
I'm nervous about this a little bit.
I feel like we're like my professor self is like ready to go and she needs things to write on.
I'm going to share the document that I made with you so that you can see it along with the people.
That sounds good. Can everybody else see it?
Yeah. Well, I just made it so they can see it in a second.
Okay. Did I check my email?
You'll check your email in just a moment.
I'm ready now.
Okay, here we go. Google Doc sharing with Tabletop for Two.
I'm sure it'll be here in a second. I'm just going to check in my drive.
Oh, the internet freaked out. Yeah, the internet freaked out because we were sharing Google Docs. I hate it.
Not even funny.
Oh, here we go.
Template.
Hey, I think we're back. Oh, no.
Did it die again?
Oh, no. I just wanted to make sure you were there because the video's all stuttery.
Oh, I'm here. Like, I can hear you.
Perfect. So
I can't see you and I can't see the document that you made.
Excellent. So building an encounter. I think that it doesn't make sense to talk about an encounter divorced from the context that the encounter is going to be in, right? And so the context that I'm thinking of is I thought it'd be fun to talk through what some encounters for the next adventure for our patrons was going to be. Mm-hmm. We're beginning to come to the end of part 2 in our Land of Vampires campaign that we're writing with our patrons. And so the party has been kind of on this free form nodal style adventure, and they've had these tasks that they've had to complete in order to bring back some of the Fae sisters in order to weaken the vampires of Steimharad, essentially. Okay. And so they've been successful in bringing back a couple of Fae sisters at this point. And what we want to do is bring to a thrilling conclusion this part of the Land of Vampires campaign.
Okay. Good.
Now, the main villain in the Land of Vampires is Lord Nassark, a nasty vampire lord who has a preference for children, and he's just the worst. And throughout this part of the campaign, he has been kind of on the periphery a little bit. And we want to kind of recenter him as a force to be reckoned with and a bad dude. And so I thought that in this month's adventure, we would take a place that the party has considered home and has considered safe. And we're going to have Lord Nassark attack it with his cadre of devious and evil and bad vampire helpers.
Good.
So if I'm thinking about a theme of, so spoiler alert for Land of Vampires, by the way.
Oh no, honey.
I'm thinking that we want to take a place that's safe and make it unsafe. And one of the things that we've talked about that I've really enjoyed in our one-on-one games has been ways to get the party to essentially deplete their resources or to go into scenarios less than whole and healthy that aren't necessarily combat.
Yeah, so our non-combat or our non-dungeon dungeons.
Yeah. So I think encounter 1 is going to be a non-combat, non-dungeon dungeon.
Mm-hmm.
And so how can we cipher off some resources with that in a safe place? What's the thing that you do when you're in a safe place?
Have a party.
You have a party. And the party in Land of Vampires has plenty to celebrate right now. They've successfully brought back at least 2 of the Fae sisters to Steinharod. That's half.
That's a pretty big deal.
Of the 4 pillars that really should be propping Steinharod into some semblance of normalcy, out of the darkness, out of the mists, right? They've brought back 2 of those pillars. This is a great thing. So maybe
we need to have a celebration.
We need to have a celebration. What are we going to call a celebration?
Celebration Station.
I'm going to call it the Festival of the Fae Sisters.
Nice.
Can be a party celebrating the successful. I get a lot of practice with this in my job as a curriculum and instruction coach, but typing on a screen with other people watching me type, this has really made me confront.
We don't have to do that.
Fears.
Okay. So we've got the celebration. How many spell slots or whatever? How is that depleting the party's resources?
Well, what kinds of things would need to happen at this festival that would deplete some resources? How could we get rid of some HP? How could we get rid of some spell slots?
I mean, it wouldn't get rid of HP, but we could be depleting. Like if your adventurers drink alcohol, for instance, that would be doing it. Sparkle said gambling and games. Yes, absolutely. So some arm wrestling, maybe they get into a bar fight.
Oh yeah, the gambling and the games of chance could easily pivot into a confrontation.
Mm-hmm. Ooh, one of those scary knife games like at a carnival where you like put somebody on a spinny board and throw knives at them.
Yes. They could be
what that's called. That'll be pretty exciting.
Spinny board.
Doom or death.
Knife throwing experience.
There could be some sort of like pretend vampire running around the town who bites people.
Wow. That sounds intense.
Like a vampire clown.
You suffer the frightened condition for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
I was thinking about the drinking contest, and like, I'm sure that the alcohol in Steinharod isn't always of the highest grade, and it could result if somebody overindulges, they could pick up the poisoned condition, which they would either have to deal with by expending a spell slot, or they are going to be running around suffering disadvantage on ability checks.
Okay. Or they get back to the town and like they are taking care of injured people and before the
Mm.
celebration, if something's happened in their absence, would be getting rid of a lot of
Ooh.
those, especially if you got a paladin with like lay on hands, that'd be getting rid of some of those kind of classic points that you depend on.
And I think that something you just touched on is a really good consideration for when we're designing encounters and adventures and stuff is like if they're coming into a situation, how can we foreshadow the things that are going to happen? And so like
Yeah.
if they come in and they're like, "Oh yeah, we had a strange encounter like these four people got messed up in the night. Can you help them?" But hooray, you're here. We're going to party. Those four people that got
Yeah.
messed up in the night got messed up because they were scouting the perimeter wall or they were,
Mhm. Yeah. So let's go on to part two of our encounter building.
cool. So,
I need you to keep talking because I can't see you.
yeah, encounter 2 needs to be something that is going to be manageable for the party, but
Mm,
kind of further soften them up so that when they do face the big bad thing that happens at the end, they are
mhm.
going to have to make some really tough choices. I mean, life and
Okay.
death choices, right? Because this is going to be like a culminating event in the whole, in this. This is the end of Act 3, right? So, like,
Right.
some tough choices need to be made. And so, like, do I go after the bad guy with the last little bit of reserve that I have left, or do I save this person? So, how can we get them
Right.
to a desperate point? I'm thinking that there's a encounter, maybe there's some trouble at the wall that
Okay.
leads the party to go and deal with that while across town that's where the real threat is coming in. Little do they know, right?
Oh, you know, yeah. So like some scarecrows or some like classic undead things.
Mm-hmm.
We made those funny pumpkins that are scary and undead. They could like explode. Um, that'd be pretty exciting. Or we could even have like it could be an environmental trap too, where like they're just kind of innocently near somewhere and the wall explodes.
Mm-hmm. um I like that. I think the wall exploding would be a really good kind of climax to the end of the second encounter.
Okay. And before that, I mean, you can always do something with like cultists, like maybe as part of the celebration, they have like a parade or something involving weird masks or people in cloaks for whatever reason.
Yeah, that have kind of like infiltrated the festival.
Hmm. Or like under the radar infiltrated the festival. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. Um, cool. Yeah, maybe the cultists are people that have infiltrated the festival to attack. So let's look at
Let
some.
me pull up the cultists too so I can look at like their
Yeah, I
numbers.
was gonna say let's look at some of the fifth SRD and kind of see what that might be.
So, honey, can people see your screen right now?
Uh-huh.
Can you walk them through like, we're thinking about this thing, then we go to like, we're looking for monsters by type. We want somebody that'll blend in. So we're probably looking at some sort of a humanoid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so most of these we'd probably want to go either humanoid any race, human shape changer could be kind of cool.
Mhm.
That's going to be your lycanthropes. So
Yeah,
werewolves
that would be pretty exciting.
been a big part of the campaign so far. And I would think about werewolves, but they've been fighting a lot of werewolves lately in Land of Vampires. And so while lycanthropes are an interesting choice, maybe that's something we put in our back pocket.
Yeah.
Um, and if we look at humanoid any race, we have these classic options. Of these, if you look at humanoid any race, honey, do you have any that are just
Mhm.
like jumping out at you?
So I was looking at the cult fanatics specifically.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was thinking too, like, so you take a cult fanatic and then maybe give them some sort of like surprising helper, like a winter wolf, or we have I can't remember what our wolves in Simrod are called, but kind of give them
Night wolves.
Night wolves. Okay. So yeah, something with like a bit of a bump.
Mm-hmm.
And then having a character like an assassin, for instance. So assassins are CR8. And this is where that, like, in addition to things like action economy, the assassinate ability, if we were going to like hide an assassin maybe that's what starts off the second round. That's something that can be really devastating as well as like really powerful, is that assassinate and sneak attack. Any hit the assassin scores against a surprise creature is a critical hit. So like, let's say that they shoot someone with their crossbow.
Mm-hmm. And the poison damage.
Yeah, so they average 7 piercing damage, 24 poison damage, 31 critical hit times 2 is 62 points. Like,
and sneak attack.
And sneak attack, yeah, like that would wipe out any level 8 character that I've ever played.
Yeah. Another interesting thing that we can think about doing is to consider, like, if we have this cult fanatic in here, he's only CR2 by himself. And I always think that the cult fanatics are like, they have just enough HP at the average of 33 that like a level 8 character might be able to one shot them, but he's going to be around for at least a round or two. And so my thinking is like, what can he do in that time? I always feel like the cult fanatic spell casting is a little bit meh. You know, hold person is good for flavor. Like, you know, you're sitting there and the cult fanatic is being creepy and he's, you know, got you held. And spiritual weapon is okay. But one of my favorite things, one idea that I'm having for this cult fanatic is, what if he's got a magic item with him that, you know, he's a CR2 by himself, but with a magical item that does something devious, could he be more punchy?
Is inflict wounds D12s?
I think that sounds right.
I'd just be casting some second level inflict wounds.
When I'm thinking about a magic item that could do something cool, like what if he brought in with him a staff of charming that enabled him to change that action economy to favor him there for a moment, right? Or like a rod of rulership. You can use an action to present the rod and command obedience from each creature of your choice that you can see with 120 feet of you. And so you can use this rod of rulership to make this cult fanatic be like, people of Saint Sebastian, bow before me, your lord of whatever. And then the party has to decide, like, do I fight these peasants that I was just partying with? Or how do I not hurt them and still disarm this guy? You know, like they've got some choices to make.
And it doesn't even have to be like bow before me. It could just be like, maybe he's just keeping people in the street. So the party, you know, the wizard can't cast a fireball without killing 40 innocent bystanders. Like, you know, so something along those lines. And so some of this, just to clarify, like some of this we'll have in the adventure as we write it. But these are the sorts of things that at your table at home, whether you're building your own encounters, maybe you're running through Land of Vampires, you can make these sorts of changes too. So like looking at the cult fanatic, I know like for our game, Jack and Persephone, I think they just hit level 9. Yeah, because she has 5th level spells. So Jack is actually a higher level character, but his character sheet is just really simple, but he has more HP. He tends to do quite a bit of damage. So for me with the cult fanatics, if somebody like gave me this encounter that had been scaled to their level, I would probably just, you know, do 1.5 times the 33 or take the average and, you know, roll the average myself, the 68 plus 6, and see how that goes. Or I've even done it to where if I wanted to kind of pull something really fast and I was like, this is the base level thing I want, I've just doubled the HP to keep things really simple, where I'm like, I want this person to stay around for a little bit longer. I don't want to throw everything off, and I don't want to accidentally kill a party member. So those are just like, play with the HP can be really helpful when you are prepping and scaling encounters yourself. Don't be afraid to mess with that before the encounter and or to tweak it while you're running the encounter.
I think that's great advice. So kind of playing with the fact that this encounter that we're dreaming up might involve, I like that what we've come up with so far involves like plenty of role-playing opportunities in the first bit. Mm-hmm. And then even this, if we have a cult fanatic with a rod of rulership that, you know, compels the villagers to cover some kind of other dastardly thing, there's still plenty of RP. And like, we're not just like, the objective isn't necessarily reduce all bad guys to 0 HP, right? The objective is to contain the situation.
Or like save as many bystanders as possible.
Yeah, that's something we like to think about when we're making encounters. And then towards the end of encounter 2, since we are dealing with Lord Nassark and his cadre of evil, vampire, undead, scary badness, I went back to the 5th SRD and looked at monsters by type and sorted to undead. And just scrolling through, one of the things that caught my eye was an ogre zombie.
Okay. And
I had very strong memories of like in Two Towers, where the crazy Urukai has got the exploding keg over his head. And he's just like, oh, I'm running to the thing. And they're trying to bring him down. And I was thinking about that, especially with the ogre zombie's undead fortitude. If damage reduces the zombie to 0 hit points, it has to make a con save with a DC of 5 plus the damage taken, unless the damage is radiant or from a critical hit. On a success, the zombie drops to 1 hit point instead. And so you could recreate that feeling of, we're trying to bring this thing down. How is it still up? How is it still getting a turn? And moving towards potentially blowing up the wall of Saint Sebastian.
Like that. Of course, we could look at something like the Vampire Spawn 2 with those specific kind of rules for how to fight them. And that lets depending on the type of character who's running around this world ruled by vampires, if they're aware of the different things that are going to hurt the vampires, or maybe you even have your own house rules for what those things look like or what they are, if they tap into those, this would be the time for them to be really rewarded for that. Or if they have kind of, Nassark's been sidelined, if they've been more focused on the Fae Sisters, this might be more of a wake-up call, like, oh, this is why we were here in the first place.
Definitely.
This is what we've been trying to do. So yeah, I think just like kind of playing around with those things. So these are like a lot of the questions that we'll be asking when we're building an encounter. But if you're looking to add an encounter, I know a couple people who are running this campaign or another one who play with their kids are often looking at, how do I add more encounters to this? Because they want to roll the dice. Those are some of the questions that you can be asking too.
Yeah.
I wonder also if we could so this is more like from the GM perspective. I don't know that it would work. I don't know how we would manage it as the designers, but if part of the strategy could be to separate, say, the PC and the GM PC during the combat, that's going to make so if you have a cast star facing like a CR5 vampire spawn who's trying to bite them, that's going to start to look really different than a vampire spawn facing off against a really tanky character. Because why would they be trying to grapple, for instance, your really beefy paladin instead of like this wizard's just running around trying to cast his fireball.
Hello.
Just gonna nab him.
Pew, pew. Yeah. And I wonder if that could be part of the second encounter where they have to make those decisions in those two different directions. Like there's a direct immediate threat that like looks like it has a pool of hit points that's coming at the wall. And here's this other potentially more complicated threat of this, something's going on with the villagers. Like kind of simultaneously two crises. And then however that resolves into encounter 3, where we want to bring in Rodian and Olya and Anya.
They've already met Anya.
Yeah. So Anya is like a roguish assassin vampire, and Rodian is so cool and scary, and he's my like paladin champion fighter style vampire. And then Olya. Olya is the mage vampire. And the 3 of them come in and do some truly devious and dastardly things in Saint Sebastian and make it clear that it's cute that the party's been running around stirring up this old trouble with the Fae Sisters, but it's really Lord Nassark who runs this region. So they're on notice.
Dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun.
And we'll have it set up with the larger campaign. So if you're one of our patrons and have been following along as you've gone, then there are these opportunities to bring back the Fae Sisters. But with kind of the different options in the notes, I think it would be possible for the party to be planning to assault Nassark more directly before this happens. And so that's one of the things that we're kind of playing with, and part of why we're so thankful to our patrons for that we can kind of structure this campaign in this way to have more people play testing it and get some feedback as we go and see how that works. So like, how anxious is the party to attack Lord Nassark versus working on these other missions where they're going to be weakening kind of vampiric structures of the land and setting things in their favor. But it's kind of that playing with different types of large scale and playing with the different sorts of decisions that they're making. Honey, we're a little bit over on our time. I know we had that delay where we lost the internet again. Friends in chat, if you have any other questions, if you want to send those our way, now-ish, we would love to answer those. And so just to say really quickly before then, thank you guys so much for joining us this evening. Oh, sorry. I thought my chat was doing something weird.
Do you remember the question from our patron?
Yes. So one of our patrons had asked, they'd added in some extra, adventuring companions, so some additional like DMPCs, some fighters to run around with their with the PC. And so they were asking like, how do I and then their son wanted to like keep all of the characters. So they went from having like, there's the PC and the GMPC, and they're like, okay, I want to give him some options for who to add. And then his son wanted to add like all the new characters. So they had a huge party for a little bit, and he's gotten it down to just 5 of them. So 3, I think his son is running 3 and he's running 2, but he was like, that's still kind of a lot. So he was asking like, okay, what are some ways that I can get rid of some of these additional characters with like in a gentle, thoughtful way? So that was the question. Also, thank you so much, Boom Buddy, our first subscriber. That's so exciting.
Yeah.
Hey.
Thank you, Boom Buddy. Number 1, first founder.
Founder. We'll have special stickers soon, right? Is that what those mean?
we'll have emotes soon.
Okay.
Soon?
Yeah. So honey, how would you trim down the number of additional characters in that instance? So how would you like get rid of some party members in a thoughtful, sweet way?
So not like falling rocks, they all die kind of way.
No killing them.
I think that it's like, I love in our games oh my gosh. We disconnected again for a second.
Yeah, we did, but it caught back up. So I think we're still here.
Oh my gosh. With Boom Bunny's generous subscriber money, we're going to get some more internet.
We have all
We're going to move to a different place that has better internet.
That's the solution.
So I think two things. Probably I would be questioning like how much are the characters that are running around, how much do they have character development and like motivations of their own, and can those be leveraged as reasons for them to split off from the party and go pursue their own interests? If you have an NPC, or if you have a sidekick whose only motivation is devotion to the PC, then that gets a little bit more complicated and a little bit harder, but it's an opportunity to fill in a backstory that will eventually lead them on to doing their own thing. I think that having the party, having the extra party members needing to go take care of a task simultaneously as the main party, like, oh, well, this is our speed, but needs to be done, but you all go and do this main thing, can be helpful. And also characters that are still around, but maybe they were running around with the party, but then they transition into like, oh, I need to spend time in this ancient library that's going to take me a decade to learn what I need to learn, or, oh, I need to heal from this wound that we suffered during this one fight. Those are some ideas for how to trim the party a little bit.
My suggestion for a more immediate solution was that some of the characters, so like if you have a combat, so let's say you've got your 5 people, 8 werewolves attack, send 2 of them off to deal with 2 or 3 of the werewolves, and then the remaining 3 take on, it really depends on the level, of course, but the remaining 3 take on these like 5 werewolves or 4 werewolves or however many. So that way they're not having to run so many in combat. And then as they go different places, maybe somebody stays behind as a guard because the situation in a particular town really speaks to them, or in some other way that they need to go scout out ahead, or they get called away to their own mission. And I think some of it is like what is so fun and exciting about these characters. Like, do you just like running around with a big party and then running them all in combat isn't such a big deal? And so I think that it kind of depends there. But yeah, my instinct was find ways to lean into the characters going off on their own while still expressing their love and affection for the PC, instead of telling them off or having them leave because they're, for whatever other reason. My other suggestion was if he really likes a couple of them, they could branch off into their own campaign, kind of like you wanted to do for Lady Ingrid and her human companion. Jonathan created this giant owl named Lady Ingrid, who is part of this giant owl society. I don't know. She sounded like Persephone was obsessed with her, and Persephone and Lady Ingrid would definitely have had their own campaign running around. But I know you wanted to have them there, like you sent them off on their own mission in hopes that, like, if we needed a break or something, we could just be these 2 random characters.
I love the Dragonborn, who's got some definite Argonian from Skyrim style vibes. He's like Zaraj or something. No, that's in Waterdeep. Anyway, but he's like strictly motivated by like how much loot that he can get, and he's got
Right.
the siege breaker shield.
Yes.
It acts as
with
a
the ring.
doorway with the
We need to make
ring.
that item for our patrons.
Whew.
We keep forgetting.
That is a spicy item. Maybe that's how Rodian gets into Saint Sebastian.
And walk up the wall.
That's true. He didn't need it.
He doesn't need a fancy thing to get in any doorways. He's just gonna walk sideways. I think it's interesting, like, this is just a random question, but like how you picture like vampires scaling things. So do they just like run up the wall? Because it's called spider climb, isn't it? I was just looking at it.
Yeah.
Versus like is it like
skittering.
the vampire in Van Helsing who just turns and walks up a wall kind of vertically, and then just their hair falls back and the rest of them look super normal.
I think it depends on how cool they are.
Yeah, which one is the cooler way of doing it?
I think definitely the Dracula from Van Helsing way is the cooler way because it takes longer, and it's like I'm not even worried about it.
Yeah, I'm not even in a hurry. I'm just going up this wall.
It's like you don't run away from explosions if you're cool. You walk away from them.
Mm-hmm.
So
Air flip.
same concept.
Well, that's good to know.
Or just turning into a cloud of bats and zooming around. It's all.
That's, I think, the coolest thing. That's the coolest
cool, yeah.
way to get from one place to another. That cloud, and then you're back to normal.
Yeah.
Just adjust your cloak. There you go.
Just do a little.
Cool guys don't look at explosions. I really like Pink Sparkles, the cloud of bats and zooming around. I think that's the way to do it.
Yeah. Honey,
Yes.
thank you for talking about encounters
You're
and
so
for
welcome.
enduring our internet problems with me.
Well,
I'll
in it
never
to
share you a
figure
Google
yourself out
document on stream
eventually.
again.
I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened. I don't know where it went. I don't know.
I don't know.
That's fine.
uh,
Would it be helpful? We'll see if it seems like it will be helpful to like put the notes in our like on D&D Duet maybe as like a PDF or something.
Maybe they're not super sophisticated because I type real slow, but I can't open it back up again because that'll involve starting Google Chrome again, and it's just gonna freak out. There's some like sparks and smoke coming out of my desktop tower right now, so
Is it a cloud of bats?
it is not a cloud of bats. That would be cool.
That would be cool.
All right, honey. Thank
you
you
so much, friends in chat.
Yes.
Thank you for watching later on YouTube.
Oh my
Thank you
goodness.
to our patrons for sponsoring Land of Vampires. We hope that this wasn't too spoilery, but was instead kind of like a fun sneak peek into the behind the scenes for encounter building and give you some ideas for things to kind of change and try as you go along. Thank you to Boom Bunny for being our first subscriber. So exciting.
And you know what, Boom
And-
Bunny? You will always be first. That's amazing.
that sticker. Oh, thank you, Pink Sparkles. I'm so glad you like this sneak peek. That makes me super, super happy.
Yeah. And thank you all of our patrons. If you are patrons, support all of our video content. They also get all kinds of fun Land of Vampires goodness. They are supporting our creation of the Land of Vampires campaign. And they have access to all those adventures and art and maps and encounters and lore and magical items and all that good stuff. You can check out their stuff at patreon.com/GroveGuardianPress, where we've also recently added fiction tiers. So people on the fiction tiers enjoy early access to Beth's novels and fiction work and all kinds of fiction goodies over there. Follow us on Twitch and subscribe on YouTube, and we just appreciate and feel all the love from all of you all the time. It's amazing. Thank you for helping us do what we do.
And we'll see you on Tuesday for Tales of Eldura.
Yeah. See if Gareth can figure out the rest of this scary dungeon.
He's got it. I know it.
All right. Have a good night.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.